as the Seahawks look to bounce back and continue moving forward with an eventual eye on the postseason. Fantasy football players are doing much the same in Week 10. But in the case of the fantasy owner, the playoffs are approaching more quickly, and the pressure seems to increase as we get closer to the end of the fantasy regular season. There are no longer 6 teams on a bye, but 4 teams are still off this week. Kansas City, Oakland, Philadelphia, and Baltimore have byes in Week 10. So you are going to be without key players such as Carson Wentz, Kareem Hunt, J.J., Michael Crabtree, Tyreek Hill and Jared Cook. As always, we help you navigate through the challenges. Read. Quarterbacks. Josh McCown vs. GB. The somewhat unheralded McCown has led the Jets to respectability and has become a borderline fantasy QB1 in the process. McCown is 10th in NFL.com fantasy scoring among QBs right now with 138.2 points, and Tampa Bay's pass defense has been consistently among the most exploitable units all year, 18.90 fantasy points per game allowed to QBs, 4th among NFC teams on NFL.com. Ryan Fitzpatrick vs. Nij. In the same game as McCown, Fitzpatrick is a decent plugger if you are without Wentz or Alex Smith this week. Playing versus his former team, the Jets, Fitzpatrick should at least deliver an adequate fantasy performance versus the Jets' pass defense that has allowed 2,217 passing yards, 5th most among AFC teams. Ben Roethlisberger vs. Indianapolis. It appears the Steelers are positioning themselves for a deep postseason run, and in the process, their passing game seems to be on the verge of improving. Rookie Juju Smith-Schuster had a breakout game before the bye, and Martavis Bryant could get back into the mix this week. The Colts have allowed an NFL-high 2,638 passing yards so far this season. Red. Running backs. Orleans Darkwa vs. SF. The Giants' running game may continue to be abandoned in other upcoming matchups, but they can certainly feature the ground game against an opponent that is having a season nearly as difficult as theirs. The 49ers have easily allowed the most rushing yards, 1,071, and standard FFPG, 24.48, to the position. Devontae Booker vs. Northeast. This is a deeper PPR league flex play, but Booker is on the come-up and may soon take over as the lead running back for the Broncos. It is clear he is their preferred pass-catching back, and the Patriots have allowed 495 receiving yards to opposing running backs, most among AFC teams. Isaiah Crowell vs. Det. Crowell had his best game of the season in the week before Cleveland's bye, finding the end zone and totaling 118 yards from scrimmage against a very formidable Minnesota defense. The Lions have allowed 7 rushing scores to opposing RBs, most among NFC teams, so Crowell has a shot to score for the second time this season in Week 10, and is worth fill-in consideration if you are without Hunter Ajayi. Joe Mixon vs. 10. The Titans have played pretty well versus the run this season, and Mixon has not broke out in a big way just yet, but he has been adequate in PPR formats and should continue to see a lot of touches as both a runner and a receiver. The Titans have allowed 439 receiving yards to RBs, 4th highest among AFC teams. Read. Wide receivers. Tyler Lockett vs. Zari. He has re-emerged as useful to fantasy players this season, especially after his 121-yard effort against the Texans in Week 8. Following a tough draw versus the Washington secondary, Seahawks fans and fantasy players can look forward to more potential upside against an Arizona pass defense that allows 25.14 FFPG to opposing WRs on NFL.com, second highest among NFC teams. Robert Woods vs. Who. He has become a much more viable fantasy PPR WR3 as a preferred option in a deep and potent passing attack that has been one of the more interesting storylines of the season so far. Woods scored twice against the Giants last week and now faces a very vulnerable Texans pass defense that has allowed 23.71 FFPG to the WR position, third most among AFC teams. Adam Humphries vs. Nij. The Buccaneers will need Humphries to step forward and play a larger role in the offense this week. Tampa Bay is depleted in the passing game for this matchup, but Humphries has flashed in the past and should be a reliable target for Fitzpatrick against the Jets' pass defense. Humphries is for use in PPR formats if you are in dire need of a plug-in. New York has allowed 11 receiving TDs to WRs, second highest in the NFL. Mohamed Sanu vs. Dallas. The Cowboys have allowed 10 TD passes to opposing WRs, tied for the most among NFC teams. Sanu has scored in each of his past 2 games, and the matchup between the Falcons and Cowboys could be a higher scoring affair.